Our guest this morning, Gingrich, you have already heard once. Fortunately for us, he has trouble with his calendar and didn't realize he was double booking when he agreed to come.
That's the only times that fit in.
The only time that fit in. And so we appreciate it. He's going to do a series of 3 Sundays, and he's going to talk about blessings. So we will be blessed by one former college Bible professor, former seminary, and we welcome you here.
As Bill said, we are going to be looking at blessing for these 3 Sundays because I think blessing is a spiritual discipline that has sort of disappeared from our lives and our society. How many of you actively practice giving a hands-on blessing to your children, grandchildren, spouses, whoever it is, every time you see them? Okay, good. Because I think blessing is a powerful speech act. Blessing is much more than saying something. Blessing does something. Now, I'm saying that beginning because I want us to begin, well, I want us to end on the 3rd section by really looking at Psalm 103. But I want to begin by those first words in Psalm 103, which I don't know how old I was, but I was really young when I memorized those. So those are just stuck in my brain. Bless the Lord, O my soul. Obviously, it's stuck in your brains too. But have you really thought about what you just said, what we just said? Bless the Lord, O my soul. Who's doing the blessing here, and who's getting blessed? God's getting blessed. That's a little strange, isn't it? Do you really think you can bless God? Well, I hope by the end of the 3rd week, you're going to say, well, that makes a little more sense to me now, what it means to bless God. The reason I say that I think blessing is just a forgotten discipline. The way the NIV translates this first verse in Psalm 103, it doesn't say, bless the Lord, O my soul. What do you think it says? Did any of you have an NIV? Praise the Lord, O my soul. Are those actually good synonyms? Not in Hebrew, they aren't. They are very clear words that mean something totally different. So why would, in the NIV, why would they translate this verse as praise the Lord, O my soul? I think they're just acknowledging that this is a rather confusing verse, and we really don't know how to bless, and we're not quite sure that we as humans, as mortals, think we can bless God. By the time we leave here, I hope that you not only think you can bless God, but that you can bless God or should bless God every hour of the day. Yeah. I say, really? Yes. Christians are really not that good at people at blessing. Jews are much better at blessing. Jews have a blessing for every occasion. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, ruler of the Olam, the universe, the eternity, the world, the domain. Blessed. And then it says, because of what God has done. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who gives us food from the earth, bread from the earth, who gives us wine from the vineyard, who created us with all of our body openings and parts. See, you say that every morning when you get up to wash yourselves. There is a blessing for every activity, and it's blessing God. So we'll have to unpack that. But I'd like to begin today by it may sound a bit esoteric, but it's not really. It's something I think we as English speakers do all the time. We as speakers, we as humans do all the time. And that is, we have speech acts. We say words say things, right? Well, words do things. What turned you from being a man into a husband, from being a woman into a wife? How did that ever happen? Did you just shack up and say, well, people know that now we are in a common law marriage and we're husband and wife? I don't think so. The philosopher John L. Austin has a book that he has written. It's really a classic book, and it's called How to Do Things with Words. How to do things with words. And we all do things with words. I think most of the time we just think we say things with words. But we actually do things with words. And one of the things that Austin says in his book is that the wedding ceremony is probably the parade example of doing things with words. Two people come into that ceremony and they are a man and a woman. And when they leave that, are they only a man and a woman? They're a husband and wife, right? How did that happen? What happened there?
It's that I do.
Yeah, there are a bunch of people that did something with words there that actually created some new reality. You know, we often think God is the only person who can bring something out of nothing. And I would say, no, God says you're created in my image. And I think you can also bring something out of nothing. When they come into the wedding ceremony, they are nothing as it relates to husband and wife. They're just only a man and a woman. When they leave, something has changed with those two people and with everyone else who was in the ceremony. There has been a speech act there that has created something new. And we use these speech acts all the time. So I'll introduce to you three terms that you may not have ever heard before. And maybe you can forget them, but I hope you at least remember what they stand for. John J. L. Austin says, in speech, there are three different things that speech does. There is the locutionary act. Locutionary. And that is the words say something that means something. There is a meaning there. We all know that. I mean, that's not very right or unusual, is it? But then he said, secondly, when we use words, there is an illocutionary act, I-L locutionary. And that means when we say something, there is an intention that goes along with the words that we say. There is an intention. And, you know, I can say a bunch of things that here is one of the speech acts. Don't go there. What have I just done? Don't go there. It could be a prohibition. That's one thing. It could be a warning. You know, don't go there, you'll get into big trouble. Or it could be, don't go there. You know, I've said the same words, but just the the accent. Don't go there. Oh, you're okay here, but don't go there. The words do something that we are so common with our language that we understand those words. You are the best. What is that? That's a speech. I mean, we all understand those 4 words, right? You are the best. But that can be praise. That can simply be an affirmation. But it's more than just giving information, isn't it? And we'll come back to that because I think these speech acts that we have always have intentions behind them. So when you're living this week and you're talking to somebody else, I'd like you to think of your language and to say, so what was the intention of saying that? And you're going to say, what? What was the intention when I said that word? What? You know, now, so you have the illocutionary. What is the intention of the words that were spoken? What do they mean? And then Austin says, then there is the perlocutionary action. Words not only intend something, words also get a response. I think we may remember, I hope you never didn't have this experience with young people or children. Please do the dishes. I hear you. When that gets said that way, well, what's the illocutionary effect? I hear you. That's very different than the child responding, I hear you. One is sort of the response of doing the dishes is like resistance. I hear you. I do it. I'm going to be grumpy about it. And the others, I hear you. I'll do it. I'll get to it. The same words and the illocutionary effect, the intention was the same. The response tells you what happened in that speech act. And so, as you talk to people this week, as you talk to the people you live with, I'd like you to think about what you say. And how you say it is as important as what you say, right? Right? Okay, you know, that right demands a response. And so some of you said, right, and others you just sat there. It's like, well, I wonder if I got through to them. What effect did that have on them? Yes.
I missed the prefix for the third.
Oh, PER, per locutionary. PERL. If you look, Google J.L. Austin, or if you Google speech acts, you'll get a little quick description of that. But all I would say is that's been very helpful to me when I examine what happens during the blessing accounts that we have in Scripture. So I'll give you 4 scriptures that have narratives about blessing. One is the creation narrative that goes from Genesis 1 to chapter 2, verse 3. The first 7 days, the first 6 days in Genesis 1 and the 7th day in Genesis 2. It talks about God blessing. What was the intention that was occurring when God was giving blessing? And we can examine, it doesn't really give what the perlocutionary, what the effect of it was, but we could sometimes explore there were a variety of effects. One, God blessed them and said, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it and have dominion over it. Huh. What was God intending to do with that? It sounds like commands, but it's called a blessing. And then how have humans taken it? And that's really intriguing. Because one of the ways, the effects of it is, oh, God's given us the right to do whatever we want to with the earth, to subdue it and have dominion over it. We're the dominant ones, right? Danged if we care what anyone else does with it. God gave it to us, and it's ours. Is that right? Is that the intention that was in that speech? We'll explore that next week. So that's Genesis 1, the first creation account. The second one is in Genesis 27. So if you get a chance, please read these texts and notice what happens in these narratives about blessing. Genesis 27 is that disturbing story of Isaac blessing Jacob, of Jacob stealing the blessing from Esau. But I want you to pay attention to what Jacob says and the ritual that goes along with it. It's a sad story. And it's a sad story, especially because, Jacob steals the blessing. And Esau comes in and he realizes, my brother has stolen the blessing with my mother's help. And there's a fracture between the two boys. And I think one of the most pathetic speech acts that ever occurs is Esau's statement, bless me too, my father. Extend it to me. And Esau doesn't do it. He says, I can't do it, which is really intriguing. I mean, I think we need to ask, well, why couldn't he do it? Because then we look at the third one, and that's in Genesis 48. Genesis 48 is another act of blessing. And in this act of blessing, it's Jacob who is the blesser. In Genesis 27, Jacob is the blessee, the one receiving blessing, and Esau is the blesser. In Genesis 48, Jacob is the blesser, and Joseph's two sons are the ones being blessed. Two sons are being blessed. Jacob gives a blessing to two sons, where Jacob's father said to Esau, I can't give you a blessing. What's going on there? Are blessings limited? But look at what happens. I mean, there's a real ritual in Genesis 48. Because Joseph brings the oldest and the youngest, and he puts the oldest where Jacob will put his right hand on the oldest and his left hand on the youngest. And guess what Jacob does? Crosses over. He gives the right-handed blessing to the younger and the left-handed blessing to the older. And guess what Joseph says? Hey, Dad, don't do that. That's not the right way to do it. That's not what I intended. Jacob says, may not be what you intended, but that's what I'm doing. But so listen, pay attention to the ritual, the action that goes along with the blessing. Back to the wedding. How do you make a husband and wife? Well, you have speech acts, you have vows. You have the exchange of rings, which often there are words that go along with the exchange of rings. You have the pronouncement. And now I am delighted to present to you Mabel and Harry, husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. Now we know with that speech act, they sort of have become husband and wife, right? Were they that before? Not really. Had they made a promise before? Yes. But often then there is now it's the call on the congregation. And will you support, who did I say, Mabel and Harry? In their marriage and give them their support and encouragement? We do. There is this whole narrative with action that goes along with it. You know, you think of, I would like you to think of other speech acts. I'll just give you a couple and ask you to analyze them. If you eat of the fruit of this tree, don't eat of it. If you eat of it, surely you will die. What's that? In the day you eat of it, you will die. Is that just information? What would you call that speech act? That's warning, isn't it? It's also a threat. I mean, and we have to decide, is it more warning or is it more threat, or how do they overlap? God asks the pair in the garden, where are you? And you know what the man answers? So that's a fairly straightforward question, right? Where are you? What should they say? We're over here behind the bush. Is that what they said? Ah, the man said, we hid from you because we knew we were naked. What sort of speech act is that? What is happening there? That's partly information, but it's sort of the admission of guilt, right? And then later on, right in that same chapter, the human says, the woman that you gave me, she gave me the fruit and I ate. Is that just information? What is that speech really? Does that sound like blaming to you? Yeah. Speech acts can, and what happens when they blame? It's sort of blaming says, oh, well, I did it, but I'm really innocent. You know, the woman that you gave me, she gave me the fruit, and then I think the man, but we don't have dynamics in that speech. And the man says, there's an admission, but it's sort of admission after a whole blaming speech. And so, and he asked the woman, then what did you do? Well, the serpent deceived me. Is that another blaming speech, or is that just information? No, that's blaming. What happens in our speeches when we say things like that? You know, you think, when I say, why did you do that? It all depends on my inflection, right? Why did you do that? What kind of speech is that? Is that just a question? Why did you do that? That's sort of an accusation. You screwed up. Why did you do that? Or if it's, you know, a person is making a cake, doing something in the shop. Why did you do that? You're really asking for an explanation. We said we had exactly the same locutionary act, but the intention behind it was very different. Why did you do that? There's another intention, isn't it? Why did you do that? Your brother is the one who should have done that. You know, there was a lot in there. So when we come around to blessing, I want us to think about what are we actually doing when we say that. I've been talking nonstop for a while. What questions do you have? Do you have any questions about that? I think play with the people you're with and say, so when you ask that, what did you really intend to have happen by saying that? You know, my mother is a great cook. That can simply be descriptive, can't it? If I say it at a family Thanksgiving meal, and my mom has made stuff, and I say, my mom is really a great cook, and all of my uncles and aunts are there. What do you think my mother may say? I don't want to offend, I'm not that much better than my sisters. Praise, my mother, you are really a great cook, elevates. That's what praise does, lifts up. I want us to think about blessings and curses because they often are misunderstood. May the Irish, it's one thing to bless God, which we'll look at on the third week. I want to think about what it is to bless each other. And blessings are words of empowerment. Words do something. Words empower, words lift up. May the road rise to meet you. May the sun be at your back. May God shine upon you, and may all of your crops be productive. That's a blessing. But blessings are spoken directly to the person. Pay attention to what goes on. I may say, God, may all of their roads rise up to meet them. May all of their crops be productive. I've almost said the same thing, right? But I've petitioned God to do something for you rather than speaking directly. In many of the Psalms, many of the commentaries say there are curses. And I would say they haven't paid enough attention to the language. May their tents be without children. May their crops fail. May they be defeated in battle. May they shiver in the cold. Is that a curse? No, that's a petition. Who are you talking to? I said, may there, you are the there. I'm appealing to God. If I wanted to curse, and Arabs know how to curse really well, but curses are directed right at the person. May all of your crops fail. May your children end up as homeless and drunks. May those are powerful words, but they're directed right at the person. My favorite Arabic curse that I happened to hear on the Johnny Carson show was the Arab curse that said, may all of your teeth fall out except one, so you can still have a toothache. Well, you notice that word is directed at you. And there is a sense when it's a curse, when I say, may all of your, may you, then there's no go-between. It'd be very different if I said, God, may all of their teeth fall out except one, so they may have a toothache. I basically have almost said the same thing, right? But it's really changed. And there are no illustrations that I have found in the Psalms that are actually may you. It's a petition to God. Okay, I wanted to introduce you today to these speech acts because when you read Genesis 1, I think there are blessings in there that aren't even called blessings. When we understand what a blessing does. On the third day, God creates the plants. And what does God say on the third day? That let there be vegetation? Is that what God says? No. You need to go read that. Because God doesn't say that. God says, let the earth bring forth vegetation. All sorts of fruit, bearing seed and that. Oh, let the earth, what's happening there? I think that's really a blessing. Without ever calling it a blessing, we have to know what the speech act is. God is blessing the earth with fertility. That's the same thing on the sixth day. Let the waters teem with swimming things. It doesn't say let there be fish. It's sort of let the waters produce. Okay. I think I'm done today. I'm tired. Yes.
Can there be non-verbal blessing?
Probably. And we need to think about how there might be nonverbal blessing. But back to blessing. Every Friday evening as Sabbath begins, if you're a good, devout Jewish household, the parents will stand behind the children with their hands on their shoulders and say, and may you be like Isaac and Jacob, or may you be like Sarah and Rebecca. And think about what that does to the children. What does it do to the children when they have the hands-on experience every week of a parent giving them, it may be a standard blessing, it might change every week. And I would think of you as grandparents, every time you get a chance to be together with your children or grandchildren or great-grandchildren, do something to shock their socks off and put your hands on their shoulders and give them a blessing. Think about what you're doing. Think about what words you want to say to them that will empower them. Oh, that's so different than saying to a child, you dummy. Have you ever heard anyone say that? You dummy. That's really stupid. Is that simply identification and description? That's a word, that's almost like a curse. That's a word of disempowerment. You know, and I think that at least we can always put our hands on the shoulder and say, you are really wonderful because you are created in the image of God. Let them struggle with what that means. Yes.
Versus today, I thought of, or came across the suggestion that if you find somebody in uniform, you put a hand on their shoulder, without saying a thing.
Right.
To acknowledge their humanity.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, often this hand on the shoulder, we know that's a blessing. And what does it do? It creates a relationship. We become attached to each other. And that's very different than stay away from me. You have COVID? You have some other social disease? Are you an immigrant? Are you, it is our fear, but you know, what you were saying, that hand on can also communicate something. So speech acts often go with other physical acts. Okay, go home and practice speech acts, John.
Ron, don't you think also that that the power of speech is also determined by how we feel about the person that said it? Very much so. Like, for example, the writers of the Old Testament, when they wanted to make an emphatic word, they said, God said.
Right.
And that's the same kind of thing now. And the other thing is that if the same person keeps saying that over and over again, it means less. And so the person who speaks becomes a very important part of what that blessing is like. For example, this miracle of a mass for Catholics. Only the priest can speak those words, and that makes the miracle. You know, I could pray that same prayer, and it would not be the miracle for the congregation. So the word is partly determined by how I feel about the person who said it.
Right. And I'm glad you brought up about Eucharist, about the Mass, about communion. Because I think all through the New Testament, the communion, the sharing of the bread or the wine is a powerful speech act. And there tend to be 4 actions that go into that. Whether it's the feeding of the multitudes, whether it's Jesus at the Last Supper, whether it's telling how to do it in the church. And Jesus took, blessed, he broke, and he gave. And I think those 4 are all important, but it's important to know who's doing the taking and blessing and breaking and giving. You want to say more, John?
Well, no, but I think that's a very important aspect because the stories we have in the Old Testament of what God said, Genesis and so on, is told by the dominant culture. And if that story is told, like if we be Islams and Muhammad would tell it, that wouldn't mean the same thing to us. And so we determine when we hear the blessing of who gave it. And if we don't have respect, we don't believe in it. For example, we for generations believed that ministers were called through the law. And see, that was as long as that was believed by the congregation, that that's the way ministers were called, then that had a profound effect on the congregation. The moment we stopped believing that, then those words would not mean as much. We would say, well, no, did you have a seminary education? Or, how studied are you in this? That would be the questions that would raise because the audience that hears it is now different than it was even 2 decades, 3 decades ago.
But we could ask which came first, the chicken or the egg there? Is it the fact that people no longer believed in the law? Or is it the fact that as the speech act that happened with that type of ordination, those words were saying the lot has fallen in your lap? Oh, who are we as a congregation?
So we see God has chosen you,
God has chosen you.
and that's a human speech that's common.
Right, and everyone. Yes.
Maybe by your 3rd session, you'll be able to help me get around my allergy to the word bless and blessing. The word for me has been corrupted by fundamentalist Christians. The book Blessed is about the prosperity gospel.
Exactly.
And when I say, well, I was blessed, I just never ever say that because it seems arrogant, it seems entitled, and it seems like, well, I'm special.
Right.
I deserve this.
Somewhere deserved, earned, whatever. And I think and that is one of the issues. I hope we can reclaim together that we are undeservedly blessed with a gift that we don't deserve and don't earn, and that isn't really ours to keep and hang on to. Because often we use this blessing as something that is now mine and don't you mess with it. And it's like, well, it's given to me, and reflecting on that passage that I was preaching on, and it's meant to be shared. Wow. You mean blessings are meant to be shared? I thought I could hoard them. I could put them in the bank and keep them. American economic theology. Get all you can, and all you get, and sit on the lid. And that's not blessing. Take what God gives you and share it. Okay. Next week, we'll look at these passages and notice what happens in blessing and who's the actor and what goes on there. And the Lord bless you. And the Lord lead you to ways to truth. You see God's countenance. You experience God's peace. A great blessing out of it. Go in peace.